I do feel like there isn't like a huge science to learning languages. There are like scientific underpinnings. There are like real insights to be had about like how one learns a skill and how one forms a habit and things like that. But ultimately, like learning a language is pretty simple. It's just like spending a ton of time and actually just like putting in the work. And so like really the real key is like how do you form a habit? How do you actually get like the right practice every day?
One biggest strength of this Speak app is to make people speak as much as they can. Like you should repeatedly speak the same sentences over and over and over. So I think the number of sentences that you speak per minute is like insanely high.
That's like our metric. So that's like how we basically judge whether or not we're successful is we have a metric of just what percentage of time a user in Speak is speaking as opposed to like watching something or listening to something. And we want to basically make sure that it's about 50% of the time. So like in a given lesson, let's say like a 10-minute long lesson, you know, you're spending hopefully, ideally, almost 5 minutes of that time speaking out loud. Just like in a good conversation with someone, you're talking roughly 50% of the time. And that's like how we evaluate whether or not our lessons are effective. That was something that was, I think, pretty unique, and most people didn't really think about it that way. But like, if we're not actually getting you to speak that much, you're just going to be learning that much slower. So like, if you only speak 10% of the time, you're effectively going to be learning at 1/5 the speed as 50%. Some interesting observations that I had were that, at least in Korea, there's, well, we've already talked about the like huge emphasis on grammar and on vocabulary. And I think there's like almost like an obsession around this, probably stemming from like test prep, but like what I've noticed is that the result of that, of all that focus on grammar and rules, I think is like an obsession with getting things perfect.
Oh, yes.
So like,
and then that makes people more nervous, I think.
Right, because when are you most likely going to make a mistake? Not when you like write something out and then you can go back and edit it and think about it for a minute. But like speaking, you can't afford to do that. You have to go right away. So you're of course going to make more mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes when they talk out loud. But like the hesitancy to make mistakes, even if you can be totally understood, right? I think gets in a lot of people's ways, especially in Korea, because we've noticed people just want to be perfect. And the funny thing is, like, what is the actual goal? Like, if you ask someone, why do you want to learn English? Like, what will they say? Well, some people just want to get a good TOEIC score or something like that. But most people will say, I want to do better in my job. I want to be able to explore. I want to be able to go to new countries. I want to explore other cultures. I want to communicate, right? It's not, I want to speak perfect English. That's not the goal. So like that really emanates in everything that we do in the app, or like the way that we design the app. We're really careful to, when we're like evaluating how someone does, we actually try to not give too much detail. Like people always say they want a lot of detail and they want like a full analysis on, you know, you just said this line and here's all the little mistakes you made. And we intentionally like obfuscate all of that because otherwise users will just get super bogged down and stuck on all these little details and they won't actually just keep talking. And we just want them to keep talking.
I love this. You know, I remember that when I came to the United States, that obsession about speaking perfect sentence, it was just so high and it just causes a lot of anxiety. I still remember in the classroom, I have a question that I wanted to ask the professor, for example. I should put it in the perfect English sentence before I ask it, right? So like, you will make the sentence in your head and then the moment will just pass and I cannot even eventually ask that question, right? So speaking the perfect sentence, obsession about that was just so huge, and I think it took a lot of time for me to put that a little bit aside and start actually speaking. But once you put that aside a little bit, you know, it's just so much better. It just takes away a lot of anxiety, and then you will find yourself to start speaking eventually.
In fact, I think like an interesting observation that I've made, and keep in mind this is like purely anecdotal, but we've done at this point, I've probably spoken to a few hundred Korean learners who are users of our app at various user interviews we've done over the years. And I feel like there's a real correlation around essentially personality and ability to learn a language. At least being able to be good at speaking a language.
Yeah.
So people that are like really extroverted and love to talk and aren't really afraid of like making mistakes, to me, so at least what I've seen, seem to have a much easier time getting good at speaking.
I mean, as a person who has struggled a lot with English, like I cried a lot, and I really agree with what you said. There is no like big science here. You should just speak more often, a lot, and
Right.
then do it for a long term. There is
There's no secret.
no secret, and
Yeah.
then no way to work around, I think.
Right.
So you should just like go through that stage, but when you are shy and when you're an introvert, it's a little bit hard to do that.
I mean, that's like such the honest truth, though, isn't it? It's like I feel like the English industry gets a bad rep sometimes because they make these claims of get fluent in 3 months, or we have a special way that's going to like.
What do you think about that? Like,
well, I think like no one believes that. I don't think that's just not going to work. I mean, people like learn languages over years, not months. For most people, unless you're going to spend like full time on it, or you're just super talented. But like there's a real struggle here.
Yeah.
And like the real thing is just like it's just like any habit, right? It's find a way to do it in a way that's sustainable, that you actually enjoy doing it. Because if it's going to be torturous every day,
right.
there's no way you'll stick with it for enough time to actually like see a benefit from the habit. So you got to find a way to make it work for your life and make it painless. And then if you can do that, then hopefully you'll keep doing it and you'll having fun with it, and then you'll eventually achieve the goal. But like learning a language is not like a 90-day journey.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there are a lot of YouTube videos out there, like how to get perfect with English in 90 days and things like that, right? I know that there will be a lie, but I always click because I'm curious, right? I mean, I want to achieve really fast, and I think people feel the same way. That's the reason why those videos get just a lot of views, probably, right?
Yeah.
And no one really wants to hear that there is no, secret there, that you should actually make that effort, and it will be painful, and you will have to make mistake, and things. People don't want to hear that, but
and it's true about everything in life, right? There's no shortcuts for anything. You just gotta put in the work. You gotta figure out how to do it for yourself. And this, I think, is another observation, going back to our conversation about like observations about the I think Korean market. Actually, this is probably even more broader than that. It's just people get really motivated. They have these cycles of motivation, and they go up, and then they go down, and they go up, and then they work. They're like, I'm gonna set up this whole routine. Saturday morning, I'm gonna work for 2 hours on my English. I'm gonna start a notebook. I'm gonna start writing everything down. I'm gonna buy all these books. I'm gonna buy all these courses. And then they do it for like 2 hours on Saturday, and then they do it for 2.5 hours on Sunday, and then they get so burnt out. I would posit that like for most people, 2 hours of studying in a day versus 15 minutes of studying in a day, you don't see that much more benefit. So like just focus on doing a little bit every single day, figure out what that amount is that feels good for you, and don't like push yourself too hard. Just form the habit, keep doing it, because consistency is key. And like if that means doing less every day, like you should do that. But like don't do this, like don't get into this trap of like getting so motivated that you like do a ton, and then you're like okay, that doesn't feel like I can do that every day anymore.
I mean, I conducted a survey recently. It was like last week, and like it was about learning. Like, what do you want to learn if you can spend like 1 hour every day on learning something? And I think it was like 76% said English or language.
Was this with your audience?
Yeah, with my audience. It was like 550 something people, and then 75% that said that definitely some language. And I think the majority of them wanted to say English specifically. And then some difficulty that they are having, they're sharing with me is like, it's really hard to keep the motivation. It's not moving forward. You feel like you're stuck, and then your English is not getting any better, right? And it's really hard to kind of push through that moments. So in terms of that, like, what are you doing with this Speak app to make the English studying a little bit more enjoyable?
Yeah, I think that's like a enormously important part of the entire experience, because if it's not fun or it's not enjoyable, you're not gonna keep doing it. If you don't feel like it's working, you're not gonna keep doing it. So I think there's like a bunch of different things that we do. Lots of different apps have different approaches. And frankly, I think this is something that lots of apps do, a lot of really interesting stuff. I think like a big part of it is forming community. So we try to form community in the app. We have community challenges people can do.
That, yeah.
That like proves to be really motivational for people. And I think like there's just something about, sometimes we offer prizes and incentives. We try to vary what the challenge is every single month. We give them hopefully like some sort of reward if they can achieve the challenge.
Right.
We create like chat groups so they can kind of support each other. So there's a lot of like stuff around community, I think, that helps. This is kind of true for any habit formation, is like giving a sense of community or like purpose is important. I think the most motivational thing that we have is something that we call our fire streak, which is basically just we mark how many days in a row you've done speak. This is actually, I think, originally inspired by Snapchat. Because they had this feature, and we brought it to language learning. But if there's ever a bug around our fire streak, we will get dozens and dozens of angry emails from people who have like multiple 100-day streaks, and they're like, "Why did my streak die all of a sudden?" It's like an enormously important thing to people who have their streak dying.